Just like that, I am live with Bernie Najar. It's amazing what technology does in today's world. You came down and did a seminar for the Low Country teaching and coaching. Jason Sutton and Krista Dutton and James Lice, and now you're back up in Baltimore area. I'm up in Michigan on vacation, and here we are still able to do a podcast. So technology has gone so many levels in our life. Golf, as we're going to talk about today, with the technology you utilize, but even in the podcast world, it makes stuff like this very fun. Even though we had a little bit of trouble getting the volume to work to get started. So, Bernie, thank you for carving out some time to come on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Pete. Happy to be here and talk golf with you and whatever topics you want to get into on the game. And certainly when it comes to being a golf professional and the things I get to do each and every day, which I love to do. So where would you like to start?
Well, I mean, just briefly for anybody who hasn't read the summary or know, let's say they're not a golf savvy person, they don't follow golf a lot. Your resume is almost second to none. You got congratulations. I never told you on your master professional certification that you got through the PGA, but you're on every top 50, top 100 list. You taught world class golfers, you teach long drive guys, you teach great amateurs, you teach Mr. and Mrs. Havoc camp. So you have a wide array of people that you work with, which is very unique. I mean, a lot of coaches like to say they do, but you actually do it. So I'd really like to get into, have you given any thought into what allows you to have such a broad scope, not only such a broad scope, but also very successful with such a broad scope of various and different players?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I would tell you I've been fortunate to be in the golf business since '94, and I got in out of college very quickly, and I knew I wanted to do what I do today. Now, obviously, in 1994, we didn't have the technology we have today, or quite frankly, I didn't have anywhere near the knowledge base I have now. But my passion, desires were to help golfers of all abilities. And when I say that, whether it's a new golfer or someone who's trying to make a living playing golf, I've been always and continue to do so thinking about the game, not just from tee to green, but on the green. It's also the mental side of it and different ways to help my players achieve their goals. And to do that, I've gone to a lot of training outside of traditional training that you would have as a PGA professional, but also as a PGA professional, we have a lot of education opportunities more than ever now. When I first got in the business, there weren't the seminars and certifications, but towards the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, I met some really smart people that have influenced my career and helped me achieve a lot of things I would not have if I wasn't open to learn from them and seek their advice. So I've been blessed with some great mentors. Dr. Greg Rose was a big help to me early in my career before he started TPI. Dr. Rose was in the Rockville area, and at the time I was in the area a lot because my family and where I grew up is Bethesda, Maryland. So we spent some time, and Greg really helped me understand the body swing connection and how to look at players, how to look at their available range of motion and understand what you're working with. So you're not trying to put everybody in a cookie cutter. On the playing side and also on the teaching side early on, I got a chance to spend time and watch a lot of lessons with Wayne DeFrancesco, who's a phenomenal player, great PGA professional in the Mid-Atlantic section for many years. And Wayne was like the older brother for me early in my career that took me along. I used to caddy for him at different events, including Q School, the Kemper Open. So I had a front row seat to see some of the best players in action, and Wayne was definitely one of them. As a club professional, he won the National Club Pro and also played in multiple majors, and he worked at the same club I worked at for 10 years, which was Woodhome Country Club. I worked there I worked there for 17 years, but we worked together there for 10 years. And long story short, I used to go there and take lessons from Wayne in college, and then I would also, as a professional, spend some time over there before I became a teaching professional there on staff, and just had a chance not only to work on my game with Wayne, but watch him give lessons. And that's something for me that opened my eyes up to a lot of things early on that have helped me as a teacher and a player. And then from there, I met some really good people along the way that have helped me better understand how to work with different players. So when I say that, Jim Hardy's been a tremendous mentor to me, and he's just one of these guys you meet. And when you spend time with Jim, you learn a lot about things that relate to golf that go above and beyond the golf swing, that help you better understand how to look at architecture on the golf course, to help your players with strategy, how to better understand working with unique swing characteristics. And along with Jim, Mike Adams has been a big help. And I can list a bunch of others, but we'll be here all day because the list is long, and I'm always thanking them before I give any talk because, again, a lot of my success comes from their sharing of information and knowledge and demonstrating excellence. So I try to, do the same whenever I can when I get to speak to PGA sections, and also working with my players. I try not to get stuck in one method to help them. I want to get a good feel for what their performance goals are, watch their technique, see their skill set where it is, and then work with them individually on building a program that makes sense for them. Because not everybody's coming in for the same reason. Some people are coming in, they want to learn more about the golf swing specific to an area, or they have a ball flight miss that's really nagging them, or frankly, they want to learn a concept they've never learned before. Maybe it's how to read greens. And that's where my good friend and another one of my mentors, Mark Sweeney, who developed Aim Point, has been a great resource for me. I've been a certified Aim Point instructor since, it's been about 15 years now. And what we've gone through on the green reading side continues to evolve. And it's something I think over time, you're going to see more and more players using it on all major tours. You'll see a bunch of the up-and-coming junior players, college players using it because it just helps you make a better decision on the greens. But there's so many things you can get into in golf, and I think the only way to really be successful, at least for me as a coach, is to make sure I understand how to implement it into my program. So I do a lot of continuing education to figure that out, and then try to match it up to my players. So that, coupled with learning a lot about the body. Of late, I've spent a lot of time with Dr. Joe Lacaze, who invented the Rotex motion devices. He's brilliant, great person, very good at helping me understand some of the movement patterns and some of the restrictions we might see on a person when they're not activated properly before you ask them to take a swing or whatever you're asking them to do. So learning some cool things to do with players to get them ready to swing, and certainly identify, again, the best ways for them to organize things to get the most out of their body and transfer energy to the club. So we're always doing different things. And the last thing I'd just say on this topic about surrounding yourself with good people, a lot of the technology I use, I've been very fortunate. The companies, for example, Swing Catalyst has been great for me, and Dr. Scott Lynn has been a big influence on me in terms of how to interpret that ground reaction force data and how to utilize that to tell your story, but also find opportunities to help a player improve in what so many people are interested in, which is hitting the ball longer. So I've certainly had some players that can bomb it, and one in particular does it at the highest level in the world. We can talk about Kyle later, but what you find is you can study success, you can study lots of different parts of the game and see different ways of doing it, but then to be able to use the technology to quantify what someone's doing and figure out where those needles in the haystack might be for the better player, or sometimes there's just very obvious low-hanging fruit to help any player of any ability. So it's not always the most complicated approach that you need to go for, the most savvy use of technology. Sometimes you can help players without even turning on a ball flight monitor. You can simply watch that ball fly in the air, listen to the sound of impact, make a nice adjustment for them, and they're off to the races. So we wear a lot of hats. I try to be one that is out there, and I make sure I ask the right questions from my players so I know, number one, why they're coming in for coaching, what their goals are, what their struggles are, and from there put together a plan to help them.
Scott is great. The first episodes I had, the first I think years, maybe it was the second year I did the podcast, and he was great. I loved him. I wish I could get him on more often just to pick his brain on the various things, research that he's doing. Um, Mike Adams, I'm obviously going to reach out to him. I have. I just know with his schedule, I don't expect him to respond any, really soon. And then you were kind enough to invite me to your forum or online coaches. What do you? I don't know. I don't want to disrespect. I want to call it the right name. I don't want to call it something
Sure.
disrespectful. But Jim Hardy.
Yeah, no
It was
problem.
great hearing him talk the other night. That was very interesting how he discussing the difference between the perception of what a hook is and what causes it, and how industry is going full bore one way, and how he says no, it's actually torque. What did he say? Call it the torque on the one side of the golf ball going in one direction, and the whole industry is just teaching close face, close face, close face. So that was very interesting perspective from somebody who obviously is exceptional and has done it a long time. But one question I want to ask you.
Jim's always been one.
I'm sorry. One question I want to ask you is, you mentioned learning from people outside of golf, which I always find interesting because usually the next best thing comes from the periphery. In other words, not in the nucleus of anything. Like, well, Apple. Let's talk about it just really briefly as an example, people can understand. IBM was the behemoth way back when we were young kids, and then all of a sudden Apple comes along with this crazy idea, and they change the industry, and then they go on and change it for other segments within the tech industry. But I'm always curious to find out what people are utilizing from outside of golf, because we're all using the same thing. Well, then it just becomes different perspectives on how you're using it. So I'm curious to hear what things that you've looked at from outside of golf that have really helped you, or that you've been studying or have found of use and interesting.
Well, I'd start with, I get a chance to work with some professional athletes that are getting into golf, and they've played it before, but let's just say they're part of different organizations that at different times I get a chance to go to their organizations and spend some time with their coaching staff and watch what's going on when they're working with players. And to me, that's invaluable. So when I get a chance to go out to the Ravens training facility and watch how they coach their players and see how they organize their training facility, whether it's the gym itself, just seeing how they're doing different things in that regard, how they're managing their players in terms of who's been in the gym working out. They have all these different areas to motivate their players all over the facility. Coupled with, if you just watch practice, one of the things you'll see in professional football is a very organized practice that has the same timeline for different drills. And so the players, they're asked to do a specific task. If you're an offensive lineman, your number one priority is to get your hands up. If you're a defensive lineman, your number one priority is to knock the hands down. And they simulate that on both sides for about 12 minutes. Then they line up against each other and they simulate a game situation. But imagine these are the best football players in the world, and they are still willing and training like crazy on the most basic fundamentals for their position. And it's very easy for people nowadays. They get the knowledge, they understand it, but they don't apply it physically because they don't do the reps enough. They don't understand. Even though you understand the concept, physically you need to get out there and get the reps in doing the primary skill to produce whatever it is you're doing. So in golf, for a simple example would be, you're around the green hitting a little running chip shot. And when you start watching players try that on the golf course, and you're amazed at how a simple shot for that player might actually not get close to the hole compared to a more complicated shot. They might actually hit a flop shot closer than a running chip. And you look at that and you go, why is that? Well, it could be a lot of things. Number one, they might not really understand the landing area for the shot, or maybe they're targeting was just a little bit off because of different conditions, whether it's green speed or maybe they misread the shot. But a lot of times is they haven't spent enough time hitting these very general basic shots. They haven't performed those reps enough, and then under stress it breaks down. And where you're not expecting them to get it close might be on a very difficult shot, and if you watch them try it 20 times, maybe they do 4 of them well. But the point is, a lot of times golfers pull off the tougher shots, whether it's their attention to the target, being able to picture the shot better. It's like hitting the ball out of the trees. A lot of times people can hit a ball through an opening very narrow, yet they can get on a driver situation on the course where it's super wide and they still find a way to flare it out of play. Why is that, right? So it could be a lot of things, right? It could be poor club delivery at impact that caused the shot, or maybe their intention wasn't necessarily defined as well as it needed to be. And so there are a lot of reasons why we hit the ball the way we hit it on the golf course or at practice or in stressful situations. But what I need to find out all the time is how to be a better coach. So I study other coaches. I also try to learn about the body from people that don't have a bias towards golf, because what I want to do is know more about the system without any influence on, well, you're doing this for this in the golf swing. I just want to know, hey, tell me, how does this muscle group work? Where is it attached? All right, thank you very much. I don't want it to be tied to golf in every scenario, because to me, that's where you get pigeonholed into an approach that may or may not be the best thing for you or your clients. So I like to get out of my world when I can, study some different things, watch some different tactics, see other people motivate their players, see other players responding to the coaching, and also look at how they're setting up their facilities to train and do things, because you might pick something up going into a yoga studio that helps you set up your golf studio better. You might walk into a PT office and see a resistance exercise that would be great to do with someone to prime their body before they take some swings. So I'm always looking out for different ways and trying to spend time with folks that know a whole lot more about different things than I'm ever going to know. And, it could be vision training, it could be all kinds of stuff. But what's cool is when you get outside of your little world that we all live in and tend to stay in, you always grow from that. So anybody that's listening to this that wants to get better at their craft, just go take a visit to some different arenas and see what's going on. You'll be amazed at what you come away with.
It is, and the point you made about doing the simple things very well. If with Bill Walton just passing away recently, obviously his mentor was John Wooden, arguably one of the best coaches in the history of coaching, at least in the modern era. And if anybody has read any of his books or studied any of what he did, and I know Bill Walton has told this story numerous times when he was an announcer at NBC doing the finals. He said, well, Coach Wooden would every start of every season would teach us how to put our socks on, because if we got blisters and we couldn't play, we were no good to the rest of the team and the chances to win. And they were so well versed in where to be on the court at specific times, and that was all. Practice was repetitive over and over and over, the simple things. And I think Tom Brady has come out and said, eliminate your mistakes, focus on the simple fundamentals, and do them repetitively so you don't make mistakes. And to a golf point, Derek Dominski, when he came on, everyone knows him as Golf Bitter Tucson, the wedge expert. And if you watch Derek on social media, he can hit any shot with a wedge that you want him to. He's like a magician. But when we were talking, it was either at the end of the show or the post show, and I told him I still, after playing professionally for years and trying to play at the highest level and playing golf for coming up on 40 years, I still struggle at times reading lies, especially in the Southeast with the Bermuda grass. You think it's sitting up and you go and it's not quite, or you think it's sitting down and the rough is actually deeper and it's sitting up. And Derek said, just make sure that you get exceptionally good at the stock shots. As you mentioned, the bump 9-iron from the front fringe to a pin 15, 20 feet away, so that you're not having to make a 10-footer for par on something that you should be tapping in or just making. So I think that gets lost in our society and technology in general, that we lose sight of the simple things. Like, get really good at these basic things and you will put yourself in position. Is the tech good to dial in certain things? Absolutely. I think anyone that doubts that is just living on an island and being difficult. But yeah, your point of do these simple things and do them repetitively well. And as you saw that the NFL players, and it just kind of maybe redirects your attention to, I've got this player and we've been working a lot on his pressure shift and this, but is he holding the grip correctly? Can he line up the club face? And as coaches, where we go to these seminars where a lot of it is tech involved and, hey, are you doing this? I think some of us lose sight. I know I do. I shouldn't say some of us. I know I lose sight sometimes of some of the fundamental things, if that even is a word anymore, about, hey, guys, girls, work on these. Make sure you can hit the green from 150 yards and in 80% of the time, instead of trying to work your 8-iron in because you saw Scotty Scheffler do it this weekend at Memorial. You're not at that level. Not many are. Work on picking your target and hitting it within a certain 10% miss error on that. So yeah, I think a lot of people lose sight of that. And it's good to hear you say that. One of the best there is. And you're saying, hey, I'm watching NFL guys work on this. I'm going to have my students also work on making sure that they're doing the simplest things very effectively.
Yeah, it's great stuff there. I think you have to have your baselines, and then you have to know off your, some guys will call it their stock shot or whatever you want to call it. They'll name their shots, especially around the green. They'll have different variations of things they do, and until you really know that, you're just going out there guessing. But if you have a game plan and you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do to hit my low bump and run shot, or whatever you want to call it, it's a recipe for success. And you have to keep scripting that, keep refining it, and little by little you'll get a nice system that works for you. You put it in your own language. Hopefully your coach understands your language, and then you pretty much execute based on those key steps. And then if there's a tweak that needs to happen within those steps, your coach will help you with that, or you might intuitively clean it up. But too often people are just playing shots and they don't really have, number one, a clear picture of what they're doing, and number two, a process that they can rely on. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to the best players, they're talking about their process ad nauseum. Yes, I'm just staying in the moment. I'm just hitting this shot. I'm not thinking ahead. I'm not thinking behind. And that sounds mundane and boring and unlikely, but the better you're trained, you realize what is in front of you requires whatever it is to be successful, and you go from there. And you do your best to be present. It's very easy to time travel, not just in the game, but at practice. So the other things that you want to keep in mind, and I try to get my players to realize, is that, look, you might have a 10-minute concentration window to practice your putting. I'm good with it. Let's just make it count. Or if it's 30 minutes, not everybody can putt at the green for 2 hours. So we want to make sure the time you're using to the best of your abilities, and you're also going out there with a purpose. Otherwise, maybe just go play. I'm all for playing more than, I think very few people play enough these days. It's easy to spend a lot of time at the range. Some people will spend, more time around the greens than you might suspect, but quality goes a long way, and whatever we can do to help people get more efficient with their time,
we're roughly
and
the same age,
be present while they're doing it, and it'll translate to the golf course.
I started working full time. I started the golf course when I was 11, caddying. Started teaching at 17 at the local course, junior stuff, basics, because I had obviously been around for 6 years playing golf at that point. And they're like, hey, you're going to go teach the junior camps. Okay, I guess that's what I'm doing. But learning in the era that we did as we came up as young teachers and apprentices, and just being in around the game where there wasn't this technology, I would say that anyone of our age had to learn really, really good X's and O's of the swing, and then how to apply those things. The application, like you said earlier, there's not just what now we know is tech and numbers and data. We had to know X's and O's of what we thought, at least in the theory that we learned under, or if we expanded it out to others, how to get somebody to hit the ball better. And if you didn't do that, no one was going to come to you for lessons. It was a very crude level in free market capitalism. If you don't improve and you don't get somebody better, they're not coming to you. So you better go study and learn, and continue to learn so that you can help these people. So, but our era, I'll call it, the advent and the development of technology had come along into the mainstream. I would say TrackMan really took it off, around 2004-ish? Am I somewhat in the ballpark on that? Trying to remember. My memory's not as clear. Let's just say 2004.
Well, yeah, they came
Yeah.
onto the scene, I would say, and where they started getting more and more traction is 2010ish and beyond. I mean, look, the first launch monitors out there were spotty at best, and what TrackMan did very well that the others weren't doing, they came up with not only a nice unit but software that people found to be helpful. And that's a big advantage for them in even today, because they have a lot of competition, as you might expect, but they keep making a platform where you can do so many cool things with your players and track data. Now, it is a radar, and radar can be really good for helping you track the ball. Radar struggles inside, and TrackMan would be the first to tell you that. That's why they have those golf balls now with the chips in them for when you use them inside, but they're getting better and better, and they do certain things very well. The camera-based systems made by Foresight Sports are phenomenal. You'll see the tour players are using both units. But I think, all in all, these devices help confirm, what you are seeing with your eye, and also what you might be misjudging with your eye. So you could watch a ball fly. I think one of the things that's really cool is you could have crosswind out there, and you hit a ball, and you could be on a radar, and the radar's tracking it and showing what the ball did. Now, as a player, if you didn't have any of those devices and you saw it and you weren't aware of the wind conditions, you might be thinking, geez, I'm losing my shots to the right, assuming the wind's off the left and you're a right-handed golfer. And you might try to straighten that shot out. But the reality is you might be turning your swing into an action that's producing a pretty heavy draw to fight off that wind, or vice versa. And with the technology now, what you can do is see your spin axis on the camera systems to know, all right, small spin axis means I'm hitting it pretty tight here in terms of not having much lateral motion on the ball in flight. It's very stable. So when you see a spin axis under 5, it's not going to be a big curve. But if you throw the wind on that and you see a big curve, that can be something that sets you down the wrong road to fix it. So I think that stuff's awesome to have and very helpful. And I think, either device can help you there. But what you have to know as a player more than anything is that you're hitting this given golf club and it's going a yardage, right? And hopefully where you're hitting balls, you can get feedback on where the ball's landing. Or if you're watching someone as a coach, you see that. But the most critical thing is if you have something measuring while you're doing it, it just backs up your story. And or if you're the player, it's reaffirming to you, hey, I'm doing this. I know my 7-iron today is going this far. And now you can go out and play with a lot more confidence, right? Or maybe you're out expecting it to go 150 yards and it's going 140. All right, so you can play from 140 with 7. Or it's going 160 when you think it should go in. So the more clarity you have on your yardages, the better. But there's all kinds of stuff, and I didn't mean to jump in front of you on that one, but I think it's a big topic, and I think most people now have hit on a launch monitor. 10 years ago, not everybody had that experience. So for them to get somewhere, whether it was in a lesson on a TrackMan, Foresight, Flight Scope, whatever it might be, that was pretty cool for them. Now it's pretty much people are talking to me about spin loft and asking me about attack angle and club path like they're club pros. 1994 when I started teaching, I would take a video of people's swings and they'd look at me like I had four heads because nobody was taking video. And I happened to buy a camera, and that was the best thing I could have done at that time in my career because it differentiated my business from everybody else in that you were going to get video analysis. Well, now everybody's taking videos.
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago, not everybody wanted a video. They thought you were getting too technical, or, it was like voodoo to use the camera. But now, of course, people send you their swings all the time. They want to know how to make it better. But the one thing that's a problem with all this stuff is chasing a look that may or may not match your body, that may or may not match your ball flight. So you really got to make sure that what you're working on matches up. So I could be out practicing and trying to put my lead wrist in a lot of flexion. And meanwhile, that might be magic for Dustin Johnson, but terrible for me, right? Or I could be trying to, get my hands to be higher at the top of the swing. Okay, could be great for JT, but might not be good for me. So you have to, all these adjustments we're making, the use of technology. Some people are going to say, I'm really working on my shearing forces now. I mean, you're going to hear people talking about ground reaction forces like they have these systems. And again, it's an incredible world of information. People are talking about things and it's great, but you got to make sure you get measured and make sure those things apply for your game because not everybody can do it. So when I say that, all athletic motions come with ground forces. You can't play a side-on game, whether it's golf, tennis, baseball, without twisting and pushing against the ground, whether you're aware of it or not. It's always happening. That's why we wear cleats. But in the swing, remember the goal is to hit the ball from point A to point B. And, if you're trying some big lower body move to push against the ground and create all these forces and you lose club face control, might not be all it's cracked up to be for you. And so, your coach, or if you're working on your own game or however you're looking at it, if you're unable to deliver the club more consistently, efficiently, you're probably going down the wrong road. And so you really got to get yourself working on some things that improve your ability to put the club on the ball. And then from there, doing things that help your body and your arm swing in a nice coordinated fashion. Because oftentimes you'll see someone, they'll throw something in and now things get uncoordinated. They might hit 1 out of 10 well, and they can't repeat it. So there's a lot going on, but the cool stuff with the technology, we can measure, quantify things a lot easier than any time before. It's readily available wherever you go to hit balls usually, and, it can be very helpful. But you can also get lost pretty quickly. So if you are lost and you need some guidance, seek someone that can help you.
One of the things that I see
further from where you're going without.
This is where I think there's a crossover
having
right
an intervention.
Now. Coaches, again, of our era, of our age, who didn't have technology and had to learn to be very efficient and identify things in the swing, at least in our opinion, that we thought was causing problems or deficiencies in the swing. And then tech comes along and it's much, much more readily able to identify, we can take swings and look at ground reaction forces and, hey, you're low on, you need, your verticals are horrendously bad. We need to get your verticals up, or we need to do this or that. But so that I think we're at a perfect point in time, at least in my opinion, where you had a whole 20 some years of coaches learning without technology, and now they have it, and now it's either validating or modifying their theories. Whereas a lot of the kids coming up today, let's say the 20 somethings who have not ever had to teach without technology, go right to it immediately. And you see it, they get very confident in their posts online, and I'm reading these things and they're very quick to argue and defend their theory, which is fine. But I don't I think that it's going sometimes, or at least in general, that the masses of coaches, young coaches in particular, are going so heavy into tech that if you pull the tech away, if the battery went out or if it didn't charge or whatever happened, and they had to go out with their player that afternoon on the range, they would be at a complete loss. Where someone like you could go out and say, okay, we don't have this. We know what we've been working on. You've got 30 years behind you of knowing how to fix swings without having to know if the club face is coming in 1 degree down or 5 degrees down. So I think younger kids, I wish they would sometimes take a month or so and say, I'm not going to use this technology, or I'm only going to use it to check to see if my theories are right. Because I know you've talked about it's great to check to see if what I implemented was correct. Scott Cox was on and said, I'll use, he's big hack motion, and I know he uses everything else. He said, I'll check them when they come in, then I'll do what I think they need to do, and we'll do a recheck to see if it changed it the way that we wanted to. And here you got the guy who's the Canadian Coach of the Year. So I hear that from the same thing from a lot of very high level coaches such as yourself. But I see the young kids going right to the tech, and they stay with the tech, and that's all tech. And they're not learning to better understand the swing without it. And now that's just a theory of mine from what I see. I'm very anecdotal and probably very broad brush, and someone out there probably say, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But I think in general, younger kids are gravitating towards tech too much. I think that would be, most people would agree with that. I'd say, and to all the young coaches out there, I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying try to learn to identify swings and flaws without it. And you can always go back and use it and implement it some more. So I just wanted to get your input on that as somebody who obviously uses it. You have both as well as anybody. You have swing catalyst track, and you have all the stuff, and you learned without it. So are you seeing anything similar, or am I way off base on that?
Well, I think generally speaking, we have a situation where, let's say you're at a club and the club bought the technology. So they outfit the driving range with whatever it is. We'll just say they have TrackMan units or they have Foresight units, flight scopes, doesn't matter. They have launch monitors, and people are at the range hitting and they want feedback on what these numbers mean. Or they hire an assistant professional that knows how to run the technology, because on the resume they took a certification in TrackMan or whatever it might be. So when they're at the club and they become the go-to person, they're the expert on property with this technology, that's empowering them to have that role and provide feedback with that technology. So they get used to it. And in a lot of cases, they're teaching on mats and they're hitting straight ahead at a specific target, but it's not changing much. And they're giving lessons and they're helping their players understand these concepts. And eventually what's going to happen is, at first they could give a great lesson. They could really help a player, and that player is going to come back happy and keep taking lessons until they're friends. Where the inexperienced coach gets into trouble is that when you start seeing more and more players of different abilities, different ages, that lesson they gave that was so magical might not work for the masses. And now they have to figure out where they're missing it. And so what I tell the younger coaches is, look, what you're doing is probably really good. If you run into some, let's say, some challenges where things aren't working out, maybe what would be really helpful to you is turn on your phone and record the lesson as it's occurring and watch the lesson after the fact. See if what you were saying to the player or showing the player or trying to get that player to feel was interpreted a little different than what you thought. Because sometimes you can't pick it all up while you're working with a player. The more experienced you are, you know pretty quickly, hey, I'm trying to show this person something, but they're looking down when I talk to them. Why are they looking down? Well, they're probably very auditory, right? They're not making eye contact because they're not a visual person. They're trying to listen and tune out. These are things that you learn as you go. But the funny story would be, one of the first times I turned on video for a client, I put up the video on the screen. I just got a JC video system with computer graphics at the time that no one, for the most part, had. So I'm ready to draw some lines, and my player says to me, "Wow, I'm losing my hair." And all he could think about was the way his hair looked on the video, not anything I was going to tell him about the golf swing. So what you learn is sometimes this feedback loop might be really good or just a waste of time. So if it's not working, you have to just move to plan B. You have to have other ways to do what you're doing. You got to start somewhere. So if you know how to run the lesson with tech, give the person feedback on what's going on, define what's going on, that's really good. But as you said, you've got to learn to do it without it. And eventually it'll prove its worth to you, But I think all in all, it's people want instant results. They love the tech because as soon as they hit the ball, those numbers pop up. And as soon as they start hitting a number of shots, they're going to see a table of information that then they can tell their story to that player. All right, your club path is too far out to in or too in out. I'm being very general here, but you could pick a variable, right? Hopefully that same coach can take the player out in the field on grass and go work on some stuff and then come back and move those numbers in a positive manner, which I think is what Scott was talking about. But, the big warning sign to any coach out there is sometimes you're batting about 40% with your players. So for every 10 lessons you're giving, 4 of them are doing pretty well, but 6 you're not sure about, or, you might have a few struggles in there. And that's okay. Don't take that personally. Stop, video what's going on in those lessons, see if you pick up on anything you're missing, or reach out to someone and say, hey, you know what? I'm really struggling with so-and-so. They've got this ball flight or these impact characteristics. And no matter what I try, I'm still struggling. And what I'll tell everybody is when I'm having issues with a player, I'm not afraid to call one of my mentors and say, hey, I'm struggling with so-and-so. Any thoughts? Here's what I'm doing. People do it in all professions at the top. We can't solve all the problems ourselves. And if you reach out, you'll be amazed. Sometimes the person you're reaching out to has been in your same shoes and they've had a similar struggle and they learned something from that struggle. And a lot of times, when everything's going well, you just think you got it. But the struggles will help you get better. They'll challenge you to be better. If they aren't challenging you to be better, then you're probably not in love with what you're doing for a living. So I can't make someone love what they're doing, but there are times where whatever system you're teaching breaks down, even though it just helped a bunch of people. And to me, when something weird happens, that gets my attention. And that's where I'm going to get more curious on how to deal with it. And it's endless in golf. A good friend of mine, John Bierkin, who's the director of instruction at Aronimink, he came down to give a talk at a teaching event that I host every spring, and he wanted to get into the shanks. And so he ran a bunch of videos of players that he's collected for a long time. And he's looking at everyone like, hey, the more I look at this, the more I realize it's not easy to fix. And he went through this whole thing, and everybody has a fix for it, right? You think you do, but you'll get spooked sometimes on the lesson tee. And again, if you're getting spooked, reach out to someone that's got more experience than you and be okay with asking for some help. Again, you're not going to fix all this stuff yourself. Study success, hang around people that are like-minded, and you'll keep growing as a coach. And as a player, you need to try stuff yourself. Like a lot of times before you go trying to get your players to do something, you need to be the guinea pig. You need to go try this drill and see what it does to your game. Because if you're not hitting balls and you're not out playing, there's no way you can relate to your player the same way that someone does who hits balls and plays. So my concern for a lot of the younger professionals, they're not playing enough golf. and they love golf. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be in the business. But you start getting busy teaching, and all of a sudden, you run out of time to play, which means you run out of time to hit balls. And the one thing I learned from Wayne DeFrancesco a long time ago was how important it is to hit golf balls. And I don't know anybody who's really good at their craft that hasn't spent time hitting lots of balls, whether it's around the green, off the tee, on the putting green. You know, for me, I have such a small time window to practice and play, but at my house, I have a studio where I can hit balls. And anytime I get a chance to, if I'm up for it, I'm going to do it because I'm curious. And it could be just for 10 minutes or it could be for 2 hours. Doesn't matter. But I still love hitting balls, and I hope that I can keep doing
one
that
thing that I
because that's a
see
big part of
that
how I
not a
figure
lot of
stuff out.
people work on, how you're saying it, understanding, as you just mentioned, if a student's looking down because they're auditory, are they watching you because they're visual? Do they need you to put your hands on them and move them in positions? All the different ways that people learn, but and deliver, I would classify as many more people would be familiar with a doctor's bedside manner. You know, when I had my health issues and I went.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think first off, thank you. That's kind of you to make that observation. I've been blessed with again great people around me for many years, and I'm a sponge. I will pick up on stuff hanging around people, not just golf professionals, but people I coach. One of my mentors is Dennis Sadisher, our longtime director of golf at Caves Valley Golf Club. And Dennis is one of the finest human beings on the planet. He makes people feel welcome. He knows how to meet and greet people in a way where they feel special, where they feel included, where they feel where they are right here, right now means something to Dennis and everybody else that's on property. And that skill is the same skill that you might be picking up on in a different light with relating to someone, whether it's a talk in a teaching seminar where you're up there and you're presenting and you're trying to connect with the audience. You got to build that connection early on. So a lot of people, whether it's in a golf lesson, a seminar, having dinner, wherever it might be, if you make an effort to connect with who's in front of you and you don't make it all about yourself, a lot of these things come naturally, right? But if you're very into you or being right or trying to be the smartest person in the room, it's going to show really quick. People pick up on that stuff. And so I've been around people that run Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, people that have done things that no one else has done on the planet. And they have people skills that allow them to be where they are in life. And they also have the humility to recognize, this is not just because they figured it out. They have other things behind them that help them do the things they've been able to do and continue to do. And I would say to you, what I'm trying to do at all times is honor the people that have helped me and be the best version of myself. But also, whoever I'm talking to, I want to find a way to connect with them. And if I can do that, then I can be more efficient in my message. So if someone comes into me who's struggling with their game, they tell me what's going on. If I ask the right questions, then I can connect with them and help them identify why they're struggling. But if I'm in there and I don't let them share with me what's going on, and I just have an agenda, which is, hey, you're going to do this and that, might not go very well. So you are going to have players that don't have any patience, that don't want to answer questions, that don't want to be asked anything about their game. They just come in like, I'm shanking, fix me. Okay, fine. I will fix you. But at some point, I will find a way to break the ice with that person. There are other people you're going to have, it's like going on a date. You're going to have to figure out little by little how to get into the area where we'll say they're put up they have a lot of protection up. Like they are trying not to let you into their fears or concerns or whatever it might be. So you have to build a little rapport with them before they're going to go ahead and let you really help them, because they're a little cautious. Maybe they've had a bad lesson. Maybe they've had a bad experience at a club and they're just not comfortable in that setting or wherever you might be teaching. So you have to realize when they come in to see you, wherever you're seeing them, you have to first ask the right questions, show an interest, and it can't be just about golf. So a lot of relationships are, yeah, I'm working with so-and-so, and you know what? This player has got something going on in their life that they share with me, or vice versa. And that builds that connection. It doesn't mean you're trying to be a therapist or you're trying to be more to that student than you are, but getting to know them, getting to know a little bit about their family, their kids, what their common interests are, that can help you tell a better story to them and relate to them. And if you can do that, you are going to do just fine. And same thing goes when you're presenting. If you're presenting to a group, the more you get to know that group in the first few minutes, it can go a long way, because now you're showing a connection to that person by asking them about, or the group, about a certain common theme. So like a lot of times you can walk into a room and there's 30 people waiting for you to give a talk. You might find out 30 minutes in that the only people they teach are beginners. So is your talk on ground reaction forces going to help that group? Probably not. Right? Or is your talk about performance tracking going to help that group? So you need to know who your audience is. You might find your audience is, well, they've already taken lessons from a highly technical instructor. They already know all this information that you thought you were going to share with them. Maybe what they're coming to you for is to help them improve their mental skills, or help them improve how they're going to organize their practice. So you got to ask the right questions, and you need to spend time with them where it's not transactional. It's obviously a transaction from the standpoint they're coming to see you, they're paying you for your time, but it shouldn't feel transactional to them. So you want to make sure when the lesson begins, you're prompt, you're checking in with them like a doctor, like you mentioned, the bedside manner. How are you feeling? How's the game? What's going on? Great. All right, let's check some things out, and then give them some positive feedback whenever you can. Very easy to stand there and maybe, point out some flaws, or they're going to be quick to say, oh, I hate that in my swing, or, that's the shot, because it's human nature, right? But if we can find some positives, encourage them, give them some things that help them get on track or stay on track, it works out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. I think anytime you watch someone present at a high level, you'll pick something up. So again, it doesn't have to be golf related. You could be watching President Obama give a talk, and his style is very different than Trump's. And I'm not here to talk politics, but they're both very effective in their own unique way, and they connect with a large audience, right? And love them or hate them, it doesn't matter, but they both are very good compared to some of the others who I'll leave nameless at this point. But they're going to be interesting to listen to, whether you believe in what they're saying or not, because they have a style, and their style might be more relatable to you than the next person or whoever it might be. There's certain people out there that when they have a message to give, they're very good at giving that type of message. So you have to study different styles out there. And it could be someone like Joel Osteen. It could be someone like Tony Robbins. It could be someone that's completely outside of what you do in golf, but they're great at inspiring, motivating people. And they might have a different tone than you. They might have a different look than you, but they're very good at what they do. It could be Dr. Phil. It could be Oprah. There's endless examples of success out there. I'm just using some big names that pop up a lot of times. You could be listening to Kenny Chesney on No Shoes Radio, and he's talking about how thankful he is about this world he lives in with this amazing following that he has, and they're this nation, No Shoes Nation. He's always connecting people. He's a genius at doing that. And I'm not telling you this because you don't know it. I'm sure you know it. And if you ever paid attention to what he does, like his music or not, he's great at bringing people together. So I'm a big believer in studying success, paying attention to the themes people use when they communicate. And there are different strategies out there you can use. One of them is, first off, videotape yourself giving a talk, whether it's a lesson or you're getting ready to give a talk somewhere. Do a dry run in front of the camera. Play it back. How's it look? It's not. Yeah. Well, you might notice that you're using too many fillers. You might notice that your gestures are too much or too little, or you don't pause. You might notice that you're talking really fast. Whatever it might be, you can always tweak it. So you have to keep doing these drafts. And if you go to shoot, like, for example, a video tip, here's how to hit this type of shot. You get in front of the camera, describe it, hit the shot, and go back, watch it. See what came out. If you like it, great. You got a tip done. If you think you can do better, do it again. Check your work. Most people don't check their work. That's why very few people. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Great. Yeah, that's good. Mhm. I think that's invaluable. And remember, no matter what you do, whether you're giving a talk for golfers or you're walking into a room to calm people down. In college, I took a class. I was a business major at the American University, and my professor, Dr. Linos, one of his group activities would be you now have a situation, you have to calm down a group of workers that just got laid off, or you have to go talk to this group that they're getting fired. The company sent you in to handle the situation. And back then, you're thinking to yourself, all right, why am I doing this? Like, I'm going to, I'm not doing this for a living. I'm going to get in the golf business. But it's no different than someone freaking out. They just played the worst round of their life. Or, all of a sudden they were playing well and they're really struggling now, or they have a tournament coming up. They're very anxious about it because they've been hitting some indifferent shots all of a sudden. So you have to have that skill as well. You have to be able to get people back to where they can trust that they can go out there and do it. And to do that, you have to connect with them. Say, hey, look, you know what? I've had that shot. I've missed just like you just missed there. I know what that's from. It'd be like the doctor saying to you, oh, you're experiencing this back pain because this is going on. But here's the good news. We've had a lot of success with players or patients, whatever you want to use for the word choice. And here's what you need to do. So when you can give people feedback on what's going on, a game plan to help the situation, fix it, whatever you want to call it, give them some clarity, and they're going to leave pretty happy. And let them know they can do it. You'll be amazed at how far just telling someone, I believe you can do it. Just saying that to them will help them along the way more than you probably would ever think. People need to know you believe in them. And at the same time, you got to be careful that you don't lose track of calling them out when they're not doing well. I need more from you. I know you can do it, but you're you're not doing enough. If you want this goal, we need you to do more of this because we can't go from here to there unless you're willing to put the work in. So they need those tough talks too. But more than anything, communication's all about relating to your audience. And some people you're going to find an easier time relating to than others. And sometimes It's not your fault. You're just not going to get through to that person or group. It's just you're the wrong person for that situation. You can't please everybody. Once you make peace with that, you'll be a lot happier. And you know what? It's good if you find yourself trying to figure out what you can do to get better. That's all healthy stuff. And the best way to do it, again, whether it's your girlfriend filming you, making the videos, or getting a few people to watch a lesson you gave that you recorded for feedback, be okay with feedback. That's how you get better. You're not going to get better without feedback. And being able to look at yourself and, I was just going to say, like, no different. Like some people, they'll put their swings up and they'll immediately go to what they dislike. Oh, I hate the look of that in my golf swing. So if you're watching yourself give a talk and you immediately go to the thing you don't like, that might not be the best thing for you. But pay attention to, how's my message? How does the person or people look when communicating to them? Do they appear to be getting it? Are they falling asleep? Are they checked out? Because that's telling you something. Not easy, but you can definitely get better if you pay attention to some stuff there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Brian Kim and I have worked together, gosh, it's during COVID. How about that? It's the first time I saw him for lessons. It was, that's unfortunately how I'm going to remember our start. I would say, call it February of 21. And Brian is at the time, a good junior player. And at the time, probably in that place where he wasn't sure what he needed to do to get better. And I think Brian played against some other players I coach, and he was referred to me by another coach who's a family friend, but he wanted to get my opinion on what I could do with him as a player to help him improve. And I took him through a ball striking assessment and noticed some stuff and talked to him about his miss patterns, and we worked on some things. And it certainly helped. And, at the time, if you said to me, this kid's going to win the U.S. Junior in 23, I couldn't tell you that was going to happen or even thought it was going to happen. I was very present with what we were doing. I was watching someone who's good with potential and also finding out from him, my goals are to play college golf. And then I'm also asking him about, well, what tournaments are you playing in? Are you playing local, regional, national, and so forth? So we went through that, and I gave him some thoughts and suggestions on what he can do to better his chances to play college golf, which were, you need to go play some AJGA events. At the time, he hadn't played any, and he had success locally. And long story short, he went out, finished second in his first AJGA event that summer, won the state junior, made it through U.S. junior qualifying. So he was off to the races relative to where he was. And again, this is not normal, right? So this is just because you come see me, this doesn't happen. He's a hardworking kid, good player, smart. But, we got to some stuff right away that made an impact on his game. And he was doing some things in his golf swing that didn't match his body. And so what I was able to do was get him in a better place so that when he released the club through the hitting zone, he wouldn't get into a release where his right side was too underneath. So we had his right side covering the ball more, and that's still a big key for him now. Long story short, he has a really good summer, went from having no college teams looking at him by the time we got into November, December, and he had so many nice finishes. There were a lot of schools interested in him, and he plays now for Duke. So fast forward, we'll just go through to last summer, um, leading up to the U.S. Junior. Obviously, he qualified to play there, and at the tournament, I had been down there for a couple practice rounds, and I teach another junior that was playing in the field that week. And long story short, I said to both of them, "Hey, I'll see you guys for the finals. I'm going to buy a plane ticket. I'll see you, later in the week." And I said, I'll see you then. And what was funny is after match during the qualifying, they have to qualify. They have to play 36 holes to get into match play. One of them's doing pretty good. He's going to get in. But Brian messaged me after the first round, and he's like, "Yeah, I made a triple on, I forget the par three, and he kind of made this message like he was laughing about it. And he still shot 74, I think. But I could tell we needed to talk after the round. So we talked about a few things. And I reminded him, look, you're a great player. It's 36 holes of qualifying. Go play your game tomorrow. You'll get into match play and everything resets. So he does get into match play, puts up a good number. And he was one of the, I think, of all the seeds in the tournament, lowest ranked seed to win the tournament in the history of the U.S. Junior. But that's the thing with match play. You just need to get through qualifying. And the other thing, just like, don't freak out when things aren't going your way. And as good as Brian is at hitting a golf ball, and as good as he is at thinking on the golf course, he needed that encouragement to know I can still get through there. His coach believes that he can still get through there. And long story short, he put up a nice second round of qualifying, got into match play, and just kept getting better each round. Long story short, I flew in to watch him play the finals, and it was awesome to see him get it done. And he played Joshua Bai, who's an incredible player. And these guys are really good. The composure they have, the shots they have. Got down to the 35th hole where Brian made a birdie. And then on 18, he happened to, just get it done. But all these players, what you'll see, not only do they have the physical skills, but mentally they have the composure to handle the pressures of tournament play. And what you see out there now, there are kids coming up in college that could win on the PGA Tour right now. You saw it this year with Nick Dunlop, and I'm not saying it hasn't been done before because Mickelson's done it, but you're going to see more and more players coming out that have the skills to do it. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but it's incredible how good they're playing. So Brian's been fun to work with. He's excited for this week coming up. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that's great advice, and we'll take a look. I'll be out there tomorrow in the practice rounds for the next couple days, so we'll see what's going on. I'm sure it's firm and fast. I know there's no rough, definitely some waste areas, so it'll be a great experience for Brian. And this will be the first player I've coached that's played in the U.S. Open, so this is a really cool week for me as well. But we're going to learn a lot, and hopefully, you know, walk away from there with an experience that helps us do what we're doing each and every day a little better. So we're excited. Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And I think what you got to realize with kids, especially when they're coming to see you and they're in that 12 to 14 age range, could be 12 to 16 depending, but there's different what we call speed windows, and you can have a speed window when you're 8 to 10 years old that you naturally take advantage of because at that point in time most kids are playing multiple sports, so they're sprinting, jumping, they might be throwing, catching, but they're doing more dynamic activities than golf. Golf tends to be probably not your best avenue to train an athlete. The athletes you see in golf happen to be really good at other sports, and then they got into golf. So I'm not a big fan of, hey, I'm going to make my son or daughter into a golfer and we're going to ignore these other sports because I think they're really important. So Kyle was a really good baseball player. If you ever watch Kyle sprint, he's fast and he can do a lot of things physically that you'd expect him to be able to do at this point. But when he was a smaller kid and growing up, you could tell his determination to keep up with the kids that were bigger was a driving force for him. And he would just do a lot of things, we'll just say in excess, a lot of, you know, jumping off the ground, putting everything he could into the ball. But in Kyle's case, he'd always hit it pretty solid, so a lot of people might try to hit it with all they have and not necessarily strike it well. But the one thing you'll find with speed, typically when you start applying it at higher rates, you'll get more efficient with your ball flight. The club's more stable when it's going faster. The other thing you're going to see with someone like Kyle is slow growth, late bloomers, they call them a lot of times. They will oftentimes have to work so much harder than everybody else that when they actually get that rocket fuel in their growth spurt, they'll just bypass everybody, right? And then the kid that was really big, that was not threatened by anybody, who doesn't necessarily feel like they need to push it real hard, all of a sudden they get passed. And I'm not saying that happens to everybody, but it's happened to plenty of people. And so there's no one that works harder than Kyle. even today. Like he was out yesterday. We had a session working on his wedges and putting, and he is a grinder, and he's going to grind with his golf game, what he's doing in the gym, tracking his nutrition. He works his butt off day in, day out. He's always thinking about it. So he's really at the top of his game for many reasons. It's not just I can swing fast. It's he learned to put the club on the ball playing regular golf. The majority of people he's competing against, they've never played regular golf. They've come into long drive from baseball or another sport. Yes, they can swing the driver fast, but if you saw where some of the ball flights end up, you can, yeah, you would be amazed where the balls go during a long drive competition. So he hits it solid. He understands what the conditions are doing. He can look at the grid and go, all right, the wind's off the left or off the right. It's into us, whatever. He's got a long drive coach that helps him a lot on the equipment side and the ballistics of things. Bobby Peterson, who's awesome, and they will strategize, to get those dynamics. And Bobby's great at rigging the clubs up for the players. Again, these are things, try to build a golf club for someone that swings 165. I don't have the shaft in my matrix. Your brother doesn't have the shaft. How do you know what loft to put? I mean, there's just, it's a whole nother set of issues. But he's smart enough to surround himself with good people. He's very hardworking, as I mentioned, and he's also someone that cares so much. He's giving it his all the time. And talk about someone that studies success, he studies it. He's not just locked into long drive and all about himself. Don't get me wrong. He believes in himself and he's very confident, but he's also going to watch other success stories in other sports and learn from it. So, I think that's a big thing. No matter what you're doing, study success, be committed to what you're doing, obsess over it, give it your best. Good things will happen. Mm-hmm. The main thing you'll find is when you train to hit the ball longer, you just have to change the type of intervals you're using for shots. So you tell people, hey, this is not we're not going to jog here. If you want to go fast, we're going to do a speed session and we're going to keep the intensity up, but we're going to shut it down pretty quickly because we're not expecting you to do this for an hour. And you also need to get into stuff with them to figure out where their best sources of power are. So if it's someone that it's a lower body power source or an arm speed power source or a swing length power source or whatever it might be, you have to understand how to work with their superpower. And if they don't have one, that's a different story. But you usually can find something where a player can access a little bit more. And that's what you need to use to fuel their swing. The intensity needs to be high. And then again, as soon as there's a speed drop, you shut it down. The other thing is don't worry about dispersion when you're training for distance. Give it a rip. Go find it. And if you get rid of trying to control the ball, if you get people activated and ready to go, you can get them to go better in terms of pushing their outer limits. Some people, you might get a big jump in ball speed, not necessarily club speed, just by getting them to strike it more solid. Or you might get some club speed jumps, and just depending on the player and what they're willing to do, there are a lot of different ways to help them hit the ball longer. But the most critical thing that you're going to learn from watching long drivers is they are like baseball players trying to hit home runs. They're not trying to hit base hits. They are swinging for the fences. So it's fun, but also, and I'll leave you with this, you got to make sure that you have warmed up the player to go for this home run derby, right? Don't try to get out there cold and do it. That's how injuries happen. And also, just understand 25 balls is a lot for people. 5 sets of 5 tee shots. We'll say each set no more than 90 seconds. And, let's say you hit 5 in 90 seconds, take a break. All right. Give yourself another, 90 seconds between them. So it can end pretty quickly. But what you'll learn, the more you do these kind of things with players, number one, they're having fun. Number two, they're pushing through barriers they have. And that can help them in so many ways and give them confidence, because, as soon as you start realizing you can go a little faster, hit the ball a little harder, your confidence is going to go up. And you will find in these sessions, if you prepare them properly and get them to realize we're trying to time your speeds so that they're to the ball, and you keep getting them better at transferring that energy, they start hitting the ball better. They start hitting it straighter than they would ever expect swinging hard, but keep it short and sweet, and good things will happen. He's been doing a form of that since he was a junior golfer. So I didn't teach it to him, but he's always had a little mini rock, discreet. If you look at anybody on a force plate, you're going to see they push left to go right. But as it got more exaggerated in the long drive training, that was something he decided to put in to help his rhythm and timing. And obviously it's worked for him, and it's influenced a lot of people. But I can tell you I use it with certain players, even on iron shots, just to get them going. And it's a great tool when done correctly. Oh boy. More than anything, just wake up every day excited to do what you're going to do. Be passionate about what you're doing. Have fun doing it. Try to meet some people with the idea of, yeah, you'd like to learn from them, but understand that through golf, you're going to see, hear, experience yourself so many cool things. So, again, you're going to try to get out there. If you notice that in the area there's going to be an event going on where it might be someone doing a long drive exhibition, or it might be a golf school, or it might be a clinic where you've heard about it and there's someone that you're interested in watching performing at that event, whether it's the teacher, the player, whatever, try to go to it. Try to see stuff in person. Go watch some lessons. There aren't too many golf professionals that are going to say, no, I don't want you coming to watch a lesson. So when you want to learn about teaching in your area, wherever you might be, reach out. You'll be amazed at how many doors will be open for you to come watch. And at the same time, if you're trying to meet other professionals and get into a network, that's a great idea, and something that I think can help anybody coming into the business. If you want to drop me a note, I've got a networking program I'm putting together for golf professionals. It's already underway, but we're going to add PGM students and new associates that are coming in to make sure they have an opportunity to meet some people that can help them along the way. Whether you're in my neck of the woods or across the country, they're going to be pros from all over. And I would just say to anybody out there that it's way easier than you think to make connections if you ask the right questions. And when I say that, reach out. And first of all, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, is there any chance I could come out and watch you give a lesson? That's probably the first thing. All right. And if you go to watch a lesson, don't interrupt the lesson. Go there, make sure your phone's off, take some notes. When the pro that's giving the lesson that you've gone to see teach asks you if you have any questions, come up with something to ask that coach. It might be, hey, I really like what you did with this player. How did you get to that decision? Or how come you didn't do this? Right? But try to be a sponge, absorb what's going on. And if you want to be a good coach, you need to study other coaches. You might not like everything they do, or you might disagree with some of their decision making on the lesson tee. That's okay, but be open to learning. Be smart about showing up there well dressed, look professional, send them a thank you note after. You'll be amazed. They will take you under their wing and help you. And then the other thing I would say to any young professional out there, just because you're having success doesn't mean you're an expert. It takes years and years and years to become an expert. So when I say that, I've been doing this for 30 years. I didn't get my master professional status till last year. I wouldn't feel right 5 years into the business trying to apply for that, 10 years into the business, 15 years, 20. I did it in my 29th year in the business. And I'm not saying you can't do it sooner than me, but I'm just giving you an idea. It takes a long time to build up your skill set, your knowledge, to truly be an expert in your field. And I didn't just do that to hang a plaque on my wall and tell you I'm a master professional. It's something that hopefully inspires others to do it down the road for the right reasons. And I think ultimately what we all have to do is honor the game. It's a wonderful sport, a place where people come together of all abilities, a place where every time you go to hit golf balls, you should be having fun. It should be an adventure. Now, it's going to be frustrating and it's going to be challenging, but don't lose your passion for the game. Keep playing and practicing. It means a lot to your players and your students over time that you're working with, and to yourself to keep yourself honest, keep hitting balls, because it's too easy out there to think you know it all and you haven't executed the shot you're asking your player to do, and you're out there thinking you have the solution. If you have the solution, you should be able to hit the shot. You might not hit it as far as Rory McIlroy. You might not put as much spin on it around the green as whoever you think is the best short game player, but you need to be able to demonstrate what you're teaching. Now, if you're hurt, that's a different story. But if you're healthy, and most of you are, make sure you can demonstrate what you're teaching. Make sure that you still go out there and play. No one's expecting you to be a tour player, but conduct yourself like a pro. Be a gentleman, be kind, encourage, and you'll do just fine in the business. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, thanks. Well, I would say, yeah, at Burning Najar Golf is pretty straightforward. You'll find my Instagram feed. That's mostly what I put stuff on these days, on YouTube as well. But to be honest with you, I just don't have time to do all the content management to handle all that stuff. So that's the easy way to find me. I'm at Caves Valley Golf Club, and I get to work with players of all abilities there. If you're interested in being a part of the instructor network and research program, drop me a note, bngolf@icloud.com, and I'll send you some information. And then the other thing I would say to everybody, I'll be speaking at the World Golf Fitness Summit for TPI. That's going to be in October, I believe. And I'm sure there are a few other things along the way that I'm forgetting about, but that's the next stop for now as we're into our busy season and summer's upon us here. So usually in the fall, a couple different things I'll end up doing, and you'll see them when they get onto my schedule on my Instagram feed. And then I would just say to everybody that we're also working on a book project right now. I'm hoping to have it done by the fall. Not easy to do book projects, but it will incorporate some videos, and that's going to be called Hit It Longer at Any Age. And that book is going to be designed to help people at all levels of the game hit the ball longer. So it's an exciting project, and look forward to having that available for everyone in the coming months. Yeah, maybe that's the chapter. Yeah, yeah. But I have a feeling you still hit it plenty far with a creaky back. So, yeah. I've got to go. I've got 2 minutes. So, what can I do for you in 2 minutes here? Thank you so much, Pete. Great being with you, and hope that back feels better. I can empathize with you on that one. Be well, my friend. You're welcome.